well disposed to yourself, to be comfortable with yourself, to be what you are, and thus to be free. To be free to be who you are means to dwell in contemplation as much as possible. And this, again, I think, is something that can be useful even in times of crisis and panic, to recognize that freedom and action require contact with that which is most real, and that what is real is revealed through contemplation. So the best thing, what is this, a public service announcement? Anyway, but the best thing that we can do, and this is for myself, but I think there's some truth to this. The only thing and the best thing that we can do right now is to contemplate, think about what is real, think about what matters, and to well, to learn to see the corruption and the deceit that is at the heart of things. All right. Forgive me for thinking about the real world. That's not what we're supposed to be doing in metaphysics. Now, let's go back to the third tractate in the fourth Aeneid. And I just want to, I don't want to go too long today, but I want to talk a little bit about this idea. There's some nice ideas in this also. So what Plotinus is asking in the fourth Aeneid is he's asking about the nature of the all-soul and how we can all be derived from the same soul. And a lot of this is reiterating and going over stuff that we covered in the last section a little bit. The central metaphor, again, is the idea of the intellectual principle as a light which shines on being and which illuminates all that exists in being. Again, a kind of elaboration of Plato's allegory of the cave, where the sun is the highest being that gives being to all beings under it. And I just want to highlight a couple sections and a couple pieces of language that he uses, which I think are nice. The question also is about parts and wholes. The question is, how does the all soul, the soul of the all, radiate into all these particular souls in the world? How does the one become the all? That was one of the questions from last class. So on 252, the last paragraph, Plotinus has a little bit to say about this. So he says, to those who are objecting to the idea that there is an all soul, right, a unifying soul, a single soul that radiates into all of our particular souls, he says, they will object that parts must necessarily fall under one ideal form with their wholes. And they will adduce Plato as expressing their view, where, in demonstrating that the all is ensouled, he says, as our body is a portion of the body of the all, so our soul is a portion of the soul of the all. It is admitted on clear evidence that we are borne along by the circuit of the all. We will be told that, taking character and destiny from it, strictly in bound with it, we must derive our souls also from what thus bears us up. And that as within ourselves every part absorbs from our soul, so analogically we, standing as parts to the universe, absorb from the soul of the all as parts of it. Now, so the idea is, are we parts of this soul, or is our relation to the one soul somehow different, right? So the question is about what's the relation of a particular soul to the one soul that stands above everything. And Plotinus is arguing against the idea that we are merely a part of that soul. And the language that I like here is language that Plotinus uses elsewhere. And we get a hint as to how he thinks about this. We must derive our souls from what thus bears us up. And that as within ourselves, as every part absorbs from our soul. So, although he's arguing against this point, this language of that which bears us up is a clue as to how he imagines the one soul relates to many individual souls, as that which bears us, that which carries us along. It's not that we are a part of it, but that we are instead made possible by it. It carries us forward. To this, our first answer, he says on 253, is that to place certain things under one identical class by admitting an identical range of operation is to make them of one common species and puts an end to all mention of part. The reasonable conclusion would be, on the contrary, that there is one identical soul, every separate manifestation being that soul complete. Now, so what Plotinus is saying is precisely exactly what people were worried that Plato was saying. Remember, we discussed this at some length, right? One of the problems with the idea of forms for Aristotle is that if there is a form of the human being, then all people will have the same form. And if we call that form soul, then we'd say all people have the same soul. This is unacceptable to Aristotle, right? We have to all have our individual souls. And it certainly seems that in reality we do have our separate souls. So Plotinus's challenge is to explain how it can be that we, in fact, all do have an identical soul. So how can this be? He goes on. In such questions as this, it is important to clarify the significance of part. Now, what do we mean by a part? Plotinus has just said in the first paragraph on 253, every separate manifestation being that soul complete, that one soul is complete in each person. It's not that we have some share of it, but we have the whole soul in ourselves. So one way we could think of the part of soul that we have would be to say, well, we are like segments of a circle. Each individual soul is a segment of the circle that is the all soul, the one soul, the soul that is universal. Plotinus says this is wrong. If that were the way it is, then we would be incomplete necessarily. Right? Each individual would be incomplete. We wouldn't have any full essence or intellectual principle. We'd only have a partial principle or essence. And that's not good enough for Plotinus. Right? We need to have that essence complete in ourselves. So he says, part, going back to the middle of 253, as understood of body, uniform or varied, need not detain us. It is enough to indicate that when part is mentioned in respect of things whose members are alike, it refers to mass and not to ideal forms. So part, as we think about it with respect to body, has to do with mass and matter, and has nothing to do with ideal forms. Right? So this is, again, he talks about this in terms of using, again, another Platonic example, or Platonic and Aristotelian example. The finger is a part of the body. The finger is an amount of mass in the total mass of the body. But the finger is not a part of the ideal form of what we are. The form that we are is wholly intellectual. And the finger, as a part of the body, is not a part of the form in the same way. There are no parts to forms in that way. The form is that which informs the finger and the foot and the nose equally. There's no part of the form that corresponds to the part of the finger. The form of the human being is uniform and identical in the finger and the nose and the foot. There are no parts of the form. And so we can't talk about parts with respect to ideal forms in the same way that we talk about parts with respect to bodies. So he says, take, for example, whiteness. The whiteness in a portion of milk is not a part of the whiteness of milk in general. We have the whiteness of a portion, not a portion of whiteness. Right? So we have the whiteness of a portion, not a portion of whiteness. Every glass of milk, right, has the same whiteness, the same amount of whiteness. Whiteness is identical in every glass of milk. It's not that every glass of milk has some amount of whiteness and a different amount of whiteness. Whiteness is entire and complete and one in every glass of milk. Right, each glass of milk has the whiteness of a portion, not a portion of whiteness. And the same is true if we go back to the example of body parts. Right, the finger has the form of the human being, not a portion of that form. The finger belongs to the human. It doesn't have a portion of the form of the human. The finger belongs as much to the body as the nose. The form is whole and complete in each part. So I think this is a pretty good example, actually, of the way that this is the more important analogy, that soul is entire and complete within each individual.